Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast. I am Herb Perez, and this is another uncut episode with Juan Moreno, coach of the Brazilian team, but more importantly, one of the most successful people in Olympic sport today. He shares his thoughts on this very special podcast about the 2024 Games, its outcomes, its expectations, and what it truly delivered. Strap in, this is going to be an awesome podcast. Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast. I am Herb Perez, and this is a very special episode of Uncut because we're here with Coach Juan Moreno. You know, Coach Moreno, he's coached 3 different countries' Olympic teams. He's also won silver medals at the Olympic Games, gold medals at the World Cup Championships, gold medals at the Pan Am Games. He is arguably the best athlete we've ever produced in the United States, and certainly the most successful coach that we've ever had. So I wanted to take a chance to catch up with him. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great. Just excited. It's always exciting to leave the country, the United States, and travel abroad, but it's always great to get back. Got my Miami 305 hat on today. A little different look for me, but yeah, I'm happy to be back. And it was another great experience. Another great experience for me.
Well, that's what we were hoping. I mean, there's not a Olympic Games that goes by that any Olympian, let alone somebody with your stature and your record, can not appreciate, but more importantly, lament and have a nostalgic feeling for. I know that you were there and you saw those venues in person. What are your thoughts on the venues? How did you feel about that?
I thought about it, because obviously my first initial reaction was just, wow, spectacular. It was just amazing. And I was trying to go back and compare, the different Olympics that I've been to. We've had arenas, we've had convention centers. I mean, the Olympic Games always dresses it up and makes it look really nice. But each Olympic Games is unique, but this was absolutely spectacular. That venue, the Grand Palais, Grand Palace, I mean, built in 1900, the scale, just the architectural design of it. I don't know if it can ever be matched. I mean, it's literally a historical site. And to have Taekwondo there, fencing there, for the Olympic Games was spectacular. I mean, you got goosebumps when you walked in, and the way they presented it with the finals and had the athletes coming down that grand staircase. It was unique. It was special. It was unique, and it was breathtaking, to be honest with you.
Well, you mentioned something that is really a question as we talk about the games and the venue. I couldn't agree with you more. That was really an amazing venue. I've seen smaller versions of that kind of glass enclosure, and what they did with it was just amazing. But it really does raise the question, at what point can countries absorb the cost associated with these Olympic Games? I mean, each country continues to try to outdo the other. I mean, this one, the handoff had Tom Cruise flying in on a cable, and then getting on a plane going to LA and the Hollywood sign. And I didn't even see that part. But I mean, what do you think about the idea and the ability of these smaller countries to pull off a games of this magnitude?
I mean, you know better than me. You worked for the Olympic Council of Asia for many years, and you worked on bidding and budgets and things of that nature. But the truth of the matter is, most countries can't. I mean, it's most countries, build these stadiums and this infrastructure, and then once the games leave, these things are ghost towns. It happens over and over and over. I think LA will be very different because there's already structures in place, so we'll probably be able to absorb the costs a lot better. I mean, the first modern Olympic Games to make money was 1984, and that was kind of the predecessor to all these Olympic Games to develop and make money and turn it into an actual business versus just a sporting event. So I know it's getting really difficult, even within just our specific sport, Taekwondo, to host a world championships or a Grand Prix. Most countries can't do it because they don't make money. They have to be government funded, and it's just a big undertaking. So it's a little scary, to think that the Olympics could be just a certain amount of countries. But nevertheless, when they do get it, I know everybody puts their best foot forward. LA 28 is going to have a difficult time to follow in the footsteps of Paris just because the iconic um, views that Paris, provides. But I have no doubt, Americans do everything big. We've hosted World Cups and Super Bowls and just huge events, and I'm certain that LA 28 will do a magnificent job.
Well, that's great. I mean, can you tell us a little bit? I mean, you were there. I watched, to be frank, I didn't watch all that much of the games, but I certainly watched the venues and I saw some of the highlights. Can you tell us a little bit about the crowd? Because my understanding was it was
Yeah,
sold out.
yeah. I again, I can't remember in Korea what the number was with the crowd, but here it was 8,000. 8,000. When I tell you it was sold out, morning session, afternoon session, evening session, it was sold out. The area that the athletes and coaches got to sit in was there wasn't enough room for us. I mean, we were like, sitting in two in a chair. We were sitting in the aisles. Security's trying to get us out because it's a fire hazard. I mean, it was crazy. I'm certain that there was, capacity in some of the other Olympic games, but this just felt different. The crowd was knowledgeable. They were enthusiastic. The in-venue announcing was, it reminded me of an NBA type show. It was asking people to stomp their feet, asking people to make noise. Um, it was loud. It was exciting. Like I said, it was knowledgeable. I think the general fan base was knowledgeable when a point was scored or somebody did something special, and it was um it was definitely electric, and not just for the home crowd, for many different countries. Sometimes the crowd was cheering for the underdog against a highly ranked person or somebody from a big country, and that was kind of cool, kind of unique. I don't remember that happening, too often in the past.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Olympics. I go and try to watch the best performance, so I don't really care who's fighting. And if it's the United States, obviously, I'm cheering for the U.S. But if it's just a sport in general, I really don't care who it is. I'm enjoying the sport, and I certainly have my challenges these days with Taekwondo. But when I watch track and field, I watch swimming, I watch any sport that I think is fun to watch. I want to see the best performance. And that kind of brings me to my next question. We've talked a lot about the technology behind the games and then some of the challenges with that and that maybe some of the strengths or improvements. Can you tell us a little bit about the technology and the chest protectors and how that all worked out this time around?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, there are some great things that happen. I'm sure we'll get into that. And there are some things that I think were questionable. And one of them was the electronics, I think, in this event. Something to be noted that most people don't know. I'm a little privileged to it. In every single Olympic Games, there's been a change in the equipment. Let me go back to 2012. 2012, up until that point, from 2008 to 2012, all the major international championships were used by, or was we used LaJust. And right before 2012, there was some kind of battle, and we switched to Daedo right at the Olympics in 2012. It was the first time for many people, at least for sure from the Western Hemisphere, using Daedo. Strange. You get to 2016, they went from Daedo version 1 to Daedo version 2, night and day. You had these top countries from Iran, Korea. They fought a certain way. They were successful. And all of a sudden, the games came, something changed. It was different. 2021, same thing. The Daedo system seemed off. This is the first time they used KP&P. I happen to like KP&P. I have the systems. I've been to World Championships, Grand Prix, different domestic events, and it works seamlessly. There's no breaking it down. It just keeps going. It's great. This Olympic Games, something was different. It was damn near impossible to score on the body. People were drilling each other in the body. I don't have the exact statistics, but the head protector, I mean, it seemed like 95% of the headshots had to be video replayed by the coach. And damn, if you lost that card, you were in trouble. I mean, I saw in the last day, Cuba versus Croatia. Croatia does a spin kick. Cuba slides back. old school Padachuggy to the face, damn near ripped the dude's head off. No point. No registration. Coach had a review. Korea female athlete spin hook kicks this woman's headgear off. Went flying. No, no point. So I work with KP&P. I, they sponsor us, but something was different. I don't know if it's the combination with Omega, timing. I don't know, but it was extremely, extremely different than what we use at the Grand Prix and the World Championships.
Did they hold an Olympic test event this time around?
They did. They did. I just think that it was too far before. I don't know that they used this system. It was strange. I mean, I'll piggyback off this topic even into the referees. I mean, even the referees, historically, I believe they've been scoring way too many punches, but they scored a lot of them. Here, you couldn't buy a punch. The first day, second day, third day, people were doing some really huge bombs and nothing. Where, again, a couple months ago, the points are flying up. And I think that it took people out of their normal rhythm. They thought they could get a punch and follow with the kick, and also they're drilling somebody and it's not going up. I think it changed the game. So I think the electronics, I think the referees, something was just different. I'm not saying wrong or right, but 100% different. And that wasn't comfortable. I'll damn near say fair to the athletes and the coaches, which you've been working for 4 years. All of a sudden, it just curveball changed. It was off. It was off.
That was the point that I was going to make. As an athlete, as a coach, certainly as an athlete, I train for the dynamic and the paradigms that are going to be employed in the match. I do what I think is necessary to win, and I'm going to train those techniques, and I should have a period of time to train them. And so in the past, it had always been you had to understand what the referees were to score. Day of the tournament, you do what the referees are scoring. If they're not scoring fast kick, don't waste time with it. You're throwing a
Right.
kick and it's not, don't waste time with it. But in this situation, when you have athletes who have depended on this electronic chest protector system and body protector system, and they're expecting what they had trained, which quite frankly is different than Taekwondo. What you have to do to score points in a lot of cases is different than what you would normally do in Taekwondo. At least in the past, when you threw a round kick, there was a high likelihood it was going to score if it made a certain sound, hit a certain part of the body, and had a certain amount of impact. Now you have to score with the chest protector. But if you change that paradigm of what the chest protector is going to recognize, and then you add to the fact the referees in this situation aren't going to score punches, well, then you do change the competitive environment. And the question then becomes, at what point did it change? Who knew it changed? And what countries were allowed? And in the past, that's always been Korea. Korea was always privy to the system before the games. They had the system to use and to train in, whether it was a scoring system, a point system, or it was the actual technical equipment. So I'm not going to intimate that, and nor would I ask you to comment on that. But that certainly is a consideration, and it may have accounted for what I saw, which were some incredible upsets.
Well, let me go back. Listen, for the last few Olympic Games, they have a coach and referee joint symposium, training camp, whatever, and we're trying to get on the same page. That wasn't the lack of punching was not brought up or told that, hey, we're not going to score too many punches. Hey, we're going to be really, really selective. Nobody came back with that from a coaching standpoint that I can remember. You bring up, who had advanced knowledge to this system. I mean, I don't, in this instance, for example, I think the Korean 80 guy is a magician on the chest protector. The guy is a cardio freak. He throws more kicks than anybody in the competition. I kind of felt bad for the dude, I mean, because he's doing his thing, whack, 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 whack. And he ain't got any points. Like I could tell he was like, this is weird. Let me go back and just do it a little bit. And he did it match after match. And so it changed the game for a lot of people, him being one of them. So I wouldn't think that that country in particular had any advanced knowledge of it because um, it didn't show with his performance, quite honestly, because you would think he would have adjusted something, but he was doing what he did, you know, in January, February, March, April, and all these opens that he was just being rewarded for it. It was great. And all of a sudden, donuts. And that was, you know, like you said earlier, I'm a fan. I love Taekwondo. I'm a Taekwondo junkie. I sat in the venue. I went in the holding area and watched it on TV. And I want to see good fights. And this is a weird term, but I want to see the right people win. I want to see the people that I don't want to see somebody lose because the system isn't rewarding them for what has made them successful, if that makes sense. That's a little
No,
jumble.
that's correct. It's the best player. We all want to see the best player win, and I
Yeah.
think that in fairness to the player and in fairness to the sport, we want to see the game elevated, and it's elevated by its champions. And
And
historically, it's
consistent
like
and consistent at the Olympic Games for what got them there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I've been consistently good and I'm doing that, all of a sudden the system's not rewarding me. There's a disconnect, something else, and that's not correct. And that's how I felt in this one.
yeah. Well, I mean, and that's true because at the end of the day, at least when it was scored by referees, and referees were responsible, you could adjust your time in real time, and the referees would adjust in real time. So you would see changes in the refereeing from day one to day two. But when you have an electronic scoring system that sets a bar and nobody knows where that bar is, no one knows
Yeah,
how high, how fast, then it does create problems for the athletes in general. And then it does reward athletes who probably shouldn't have been, or not shouldn't, let's just say normally wouldn't have been,
normally,
normally wouldn't have been.
correct,
And
correct.
this, I the refereeing, it's interesting. I laugh when you talk about them scoring a lot of points. Maybe they were trying to make up for the 20 years of points they didn't award for good punching. So when we were fighting, I'd punch guys and they'd fall on the floor and die. And the referee would wait for him to get back up, and I'd look up and still no point. And I was like, and I know you were there at the referee meeting that I was at as head of team. And I finally said, you know, you guys don't understand what you're doing. I said, what you're saying is that the strongest man in the world, the heaviest heavyweight in Taekwondo,
I remember.
can't punch with sufficient enough force to score a point. So either take it off the books or start scoring punches. And
Yeah,
uh, and it was an interesting an apprehension. They don't want Taekwondo, ironically, to become karate, but it has actually become point karate. So it is
yeah.
one of those. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about this idea. I'd seen some chatter from you know, third and fourth tier, what I call third and fourth tier, never been to an Olympic Games as an athlete, coach, or administrator, maybe not even as a spectator. This idea of earning your way. I saw this chatter. Unfortunately, it shows up on my feed. And I'm not sure. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what feed you saw. I mean, I wrote something, and it was a double-edged sword because the Olympic Games is special, and when you qualify to go to the Olympic Games, not everybody can win, and there's some people. There's Usain Bolt, and then there's other people, right? I mean, there's the dream team, and then there's some other people. It doesn't mean that people should or shouldn't be there, but I um I have an affinity for the Olympic Games. And when I see people devote their whole lives and get there, and whether they win or lose, that's each person has their own journey. We know that. And sometimes getting to the Olympic Games and winning a match or just competing to the best of your ability is a win for your country or for your natural ability. But Taekwondo is Taekwondo's changed. There's a lot of administrative people, coaches that haven't done anything for a whole cycle, and all of a sudden are sitting in the chair. And the coach that got them there is not there. I find that wrong. Let me ask you just real quick: the Olympics is supposed to be the best of the
Best.
best, right? Track and field, there's no wild cards. Wrestling, boxing, there's no wild cards. Like, why does Taekwondo have wild cards? And if you told me we gave a wild card to somebody that was ranked number 9 in the world that just missed out, we can make a case. But when you're giving these random wild cards to people to go get almost hurt, lose 18 to nothing first round, 18 to nothing second round, this is not supposed to be everybody participation. This is the best of the best. And I think it makes a mockery of the Olympic Games and actually to them too. I'm all for equality, men, women, all that integration. But I just felt like when people just are given status as a coach or an administrative head of team, when people are just given status as an Olympian that didn't earn it, didn't qualify, I think it's strange because I just don't see that in other sports. And so for me, that's where I was going with it because I look around that room and I know there's some people from small countries and they qualify in Africa, they qualify in Pan America. We had a female athlete from Uruguay. She qualified and she fought her ass off in the qualifier. And she won first ever for her country in Taekwondo. Like I saw the tears, I saw the joy and pride from the coach. And all of a sudden, that coach isn't there. And I'm just like, I feel bad for the guy that got her there. She went and she lost. She lost to a great athlete at the Olympic Games. And I'm like, good for you, man. You came and laid it all on the line. And then there's some other people that the WT gave, a wild card to. And I'm not going to get this. I don't want to get political, but when I see countries like Russia, you can think whatever you want. They should be there. They shouldn't be there. But when some can go and some can't go, I don't understand. I don't get it. And, you know, the Russian athletes in Taekwondo, they weren't allowed to compete since 2021. And somebody allowed them to at the end in qualification. They had no points. They had to fight their way through the European qualifiers as low seeds, and they did it. They got a full team. And a month before, oh, yeah, we're revoking that. You can't come. It's just the Olympic Games got changed really hard for our sport. I can't talk for everybody's sport, but for Taekwondo, with you know the Russians being pulled with an athlete that qualified, that all of a sudden was told, "Oh, you didn't have enough people in there. We're taking you out." Adding wild cards. It was a strange Olympic Games for our sport.
It's unfortunate because you said something which resonates with me. The Olympics always has been and always will be the best of the best, and it should be qualified. And when you have a sport or you have an idea that you feel you need to do bootstrapping, or you need to correct the ills of the past, and you make adjustments. And originally, the idea behind wild cards, as we used them in the United States domestically, they were to account for guys who might have got injured who were top players. And that gave them a seed into a championship that they were entitled to be at. We didn't take it and say, I know there's not a lot of athletes in Kansas, so let's give that Kansas guy a shot. We know he's going to get killed in the first round. He might get hurt. And I
Yeah.
think it's unfortunate that we've taken that step backwards, because I saw those draws. And quite frankly, I wish I had that draw. I wish I got to fight, the guy
Yeah.
who's from a country with 12 people that do Taekwondo. It wouldn't have went well for him because I don't have that much love and Jesus in my heart. So he would have been knocked out within about 10 seconds or so, which you've been there when I've used that solution. Um, if you're not ready, don't come to the games. Now, we've done bootstrapping for the past 8 years. We've gone around the world. We've helped countries. We've developed countries. And any country in the entire world that wants to develop a world-class athlete using Olympic Solidarity Fund, for example, can train anywhere in the world to become one of the best. I went to Afghanistan right after the war, and I fortunate enough, I was recognized with the George Steinbrenner Award. I brought Afghanistan to Korea. I didn't leave them in Afghanistan. Steve Kick and I took them to Korea, and they got a bronze medal at the Asian Games that year. Now, Afghanistan is delivering athlete after athlete. They're not being bootstrapped. They're developing top tier talent, and people should be required at some point to develop top tier talent. As far as the coaching thing go, that just drives me nuts, and I see it, unfortunately, in the highest levels at the most political stages of the countries with the most GNP. And I
Yeah.
could name a few. I don't want the United States, for example. And it's unfortunate because at the end of the day, our athletes should be entitled to the best coaches. They should be entitled to the best resources, and no one should sit in a chair or a position of power that can't deliver that. And I can't say that that's the case in the United States for sure, We don't have our best and our brightest running the organization, nor do we have our best and brightest in the chairs. And as a result, I don't think we're getting the best performances out of our athletes, which kind of leads me into my next question, which is let's talk a little bit about the results. So, what did you see there, either as a trend for the world, any particular country, or the country you coach for, which was Brazil?
I think that, once again, the Olympic Games has become this crapshoot. I mean, it's everything and anything happens, and I like that. I like that. You know, the favorites don't always win, and you always get this some young, new, fresh face. I mean, you're just seeing a lot of young athletes that are fearless, and they're just coming. And I mean, I'm going to brag a little bit, but it's kind of reminds me of myself when I was 17 years old and I never left the country, and all of a sudden I'm in Seoul, Korea, and I'm in the final. And I remember being brash and young and fearless, and literally, I mean, I'm just talking for myself. I wasn't afraid at all. Like, not even nervous, afraid. I think I got more nervous than afraid as I got older because I knew the consequences, the weight on my shoulder, the expectations. But there's something with that youthful bliss where I was like, come on, like I want to show. And you're seeing that now in Taekwondo with some certain athletes in certain countries. But I think that there was some eye popping things. Number one, Iran is back. I don't know if they were always gone, but they had four athletes and made three finals, a gold, two silvers, and a bronze. I mean, they were, and quite honestly, there was divisions that they didn't take, 58 and 68, and they got some monsters there. So that was pretty impressive to see. Korea, they got two gold medals. They haven't had that in a long time, especially on the male side. A gold, two golds and a bronze out of their four athletes. Pretty, pretty solid performance. Uzbekistan, they might be the new boogeyman because they got a gold and a silver, and the rest of their athletes fought well. I mean, they go deep into their tournament and they're just dangerous. And actually, I'd like to talk about them later. Tunisia, gold and a bronze, pretty impressive. France, gold and a bronze, but maybe left a little bit on the table. I think they thought they were going to get one more medal. Um, those are the countries that I thought stood out that were just strong, all the way through. I think the countries that were down, um, historically, Turkey does a lot better than they did. Spain, when you know, didn't do much at all. Um, Croatia and Serbia. Serbia got a silver, so it's pretty good. But they seem like they do better. They just didn't seem as competitive. Maybe it was just a little bit of a down cycle for them, but it was surprising. You expected them to be a little bit more in the mix. Mexico had a tough Olympic Games. They had two athletes, no medals. Um, United States, they got a bronze medal, and the athlete that got the bronze, the 67 girl, fought amazing, lights out. Their superstar, you know, was kind of exciting, but didn't get the job done. So I think that's I don't want to use the word failure, but it's a little bit of a disappointment because you're the world ranked number two. You're this hot kid, and yeah, you don't get on the podium. I think that is sting a little bit. Um,
Well,
yeah, I mean,
let's. I don't want to. I've been very public about my thoughts on that, and I think that I always wish the athletes the best, and in fact, I sent that athlete a note wishing him the best on his quest because it's been a long time since the United States has had anybody that matters as a male athlete. We didn't qualify the Olympics before. We didn't perform the Olympics, this Olympics at all in the men's division, and we historically don't have since the times when we were strong and we were someone to be reckoned with. I think people now go, they look at a draw sheet and they go, US, yes, good, great, excellent. Oh, and when we looked at draw sheets, people that weren't happy to see us and they weren't happy to see Korea. And so, I've said this, and so I'll say it here. I think that particular athlete spent a whole lot of time on TikTok and dancing and shirt off, prancing and doing his social media, and he could have I wonder if he looks back at that now and says, I wish I had spent a little more time on that round kick or cover punch or whatever it is. And I don't wish anybody badly, but I'm going to I'm not blaming the athlete because I think that's a very talented athlete, but I'm going to blame the coaching staff, and the leadership. Because at the point where you move a sport out into the boondocks of the United States, and I'm not sure I could find it, and I'm sure it would be pretty safe from a nuclear attack wherever they're located. I don't think anybody else can find it. And you put them there by their own devices, and then you have a coach who doesn't hold discipline for the athletes and doesn't hold them accountable and doesn't see this and say, hey, you guys might want to stop and start training. Um, I think that is a problem. I don't blame the athlete. The athlete's just an athlete. He's a young man that needs guidance and help, just like maybe a Mike Tyson needed guidance and help. And he had customato. And I can tell you that the US definitely doesn't have a customato. Because could you imagine us as athletes with our shirts off, dancing and doing TikToks back in the day? I don't think so. But I lament, but I need to say that because I've been public about that, and I wish that particular athlete, and quite frankly, um, the that program helped because there's no doubt that in a country with over 300 million people and a GNP that we have, we're not competing against countries like Tunisia. We can't win a medal in our division and in for all four divisions that we've entered. So that's either a coaching problem, it's a leadership problem, it's a grassroots development problem, it's a program problem. But I can tell you that it didn't occur in the past regimes. You can love or hate them, but they had developed high performance plans and implemented them that were inclusive. They had the best coaches for a long period of time sitting in chairs, and they quite frankly had the best athletes being disciplined in their approach, and they were expected. For you, by example, you came on the team and you were one of the most consistent athletes. We did not go to a games where we did not expect to medal. We were expected to medal, and in fact, we delivered medals. We went into a game, we made the medal rounds. If not gold medal, we got a silver or a bronze, and that was what was expected, and that's what we delivered. And I think that has changed. But that brings us back. You talked a little bit about it. Let's talk a little bit about the countries that are delivering, the hot countries, and why do you think that is the case?
Well, I think that some of these countries, most of the countries, they really invested in their youth. I know it's the buzzword, the grassroots, the development level athletes. You're seeing these kids that are coming up from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and Tunisia and Korea, and they're a different generation. They grew up on the electronics, right? And there's people here in this country and some other countries in this Western Hemisphere that have done the same. But I think that these countries have identified some of these athletes. They stick with them, they believe in, and they nurture them all the way along. Because if they identify them, they gotta let them. They gotta ride it out. But I think what happens, for some countries, they identify somebody, and if there's a roadblock, on to the next one. So you keep getting this like up and down, up and down, up and down. And I think that's, listen, I work for a country, in South America. I'm very close to Mexico because my wife is from Mexico and I have Mexican descent. So I coach for Mexico. So I hear the chatter, about the athletes, the coaches, the administration. I live in the United States. I'm, born and bred here, competed coach for them. So same thing I hear administrative from coaches, athletes. But, it's I don't think it shouldn't be a problem to discuss the successes and the failures. Just because you talk about some failures doesn't mean that you're taking shots at people. Doesn't mean that you don't like people. Doesn't mean that you're negative. Matter of fact, if you only want to talk about the wins, then you're a loser. Then you're a loser. You got to talk about the losses. You got to talk about what happened. You got to talk about, how do we make it right? It's easy when it's all hunky dory and you won. Hooray, hooray. We're all feeling good about ourselves. But what about when you're down? Like it's okay. It's okay to question the athlete. It's okay to question the coach. It's okay to question the leadership. And that's how you get real answers. I mean, like I said, I don't want to pass judgment, but if you believe that the only way to win is based on your athleticism, you're a fool. That's not the case in any sport. You need athleticism, you need coaching, you need discipline, you need strategy, you need composure, you need all of those things. So if you're getting wowed by the flash, then shame on you. Shame on whoever is leading that person. I mean, sometimes the winner isn't the most gifted athlete. You know that. You were Herb, you weren't the most gifted athlete. Later on, when I was old, I wasn't the most gifted athlete. So it pains me to see, you know, certain American athletes fail when I know they have great abilities and someone's not nurturing the other parts of it. That's Listen, I don't sit in all the chairs in Brazil, and we have a lot of talented people, but sure as shit, excuse my language, I have meetings with these coaches. When they get on the plane, they're going to be excited. They get off the plane, they're going to be in the village, they're going to be excited. Hey, control those guys. Let them enjoy. But at the same time, make sure that we keep them grounded. Let's get to training. We are going to structure our training like I try to walk them through every single thing so they can be as consistent and ready as possible. It's not perfect. We're not winning everything, but if your process is correct, you're going to be better in the long run. And I think that's what that I feel really good about with my job with Brazil. You look where we came from 5 years ago. You look at us as a whole, it's coming together. So I feel proud of that. It's a little bragging on my sense, from my standpoint. But I mean, that's what programming is. It's not about an individual athlete's crazy ability to to do something special. It's about building a program, building a staff, building a culture. That's how you're successful. And so go back to what you said. I believe Uzbekistan has built that culture. I believe Korea has got that culture back, that it matters. Iran, I mean, they've always been good, but somehow they lost their way and they're back. They're back.
Yeah, they've always
So,
been good. I mean, you hit on a number of key points, and recently I've been talking and doing a lot of lectures on this book that I put out on these subjects. And the reality is that, and I watch. I know you're a big student of great athletes, and I've listened to Michael Jordan talk. I saw Tom Brady say something on this, and what Tom Brady said was consistency and persistence. And he said, at the end of the day, it's about showing up and then being consistent in your approach, being willing to do what's necessary. And so when somebody gets upset because you criticize them and they can't handle it, then they're in the wrong sport. Because I take the model that if you're in a sport, you don't perform. If you're an athlete, then we rehabilitate you, get you to a point where you can perform. If you're a coach or an administrator, we fire you just like you would in the NFL, because NFL, if you don't deliver over a period of time, you may get another season if you're a great coach. But trust me, if you're not a great coach, that's whatever they call that Black Monday or Black Friday, whatever it's called. And at the end of the day, that's you should be held accountable for your performance, because we're a performance culture. We expect our athletes to go in and win medals. Now, quite frankly, the athletes themselves have made excuses. I've never seen so much celebration of a bronze medal or maybe a silver medal. But to be frank, you were with me. I took a bronze medal. It didn't come home with me.
mhm.
It didn't leave the podium. I put it on at the podium, be polite and be a good loser like I should be. As soon as I left that podium, that thing stayed in a hotel room. I don't have a single bronze medal in my collection, or a silver medal for that matter. Those were losses for me, and because I considered them losses, I ended up winning gold medals because those were the ones I could bring home and give my mom. At the thing that's disappointing to me, and you touched on some of it, is the culture itself and the idea that you're going to focus on an outlier or someone athletic. You and I have seen a ton of these great athletes that have come through our program and never medaled internationally, or medaled internationally but couldn't get to the finish line to win a gold medal. You were in the room, quite frankly, when I had a conversation. I won't mention the name of the athlete or the coach, um, but one of our top athletes ever, and that coach, and they didn't perform. And I sat them down with you there because you were one of the other coaches, and I gave them the riot act. I told them what I thought happened and why. And this is at a point where they were going to the casual path to training, and as a result, didn't have the results they want. And they needed a wake up call. I don't think it resonated with them, and that particular athlete's program started to deteriorate even more, and the results started to deteriorate. And that's unfortunate because at the end of the day, winners hold themselves accountable, losers make mistakes, and they hold no one accountable. They hold everybody else is the reason they lost. The coach, the scoring system. Winners somehow find a way to win. They don't make
I mean,
excuses. You know,
I don't disagree, but I will like defend the bronze medal in the Olympic process for Taekwondo right now because
you got to
first of
fight
all,
a rapid charge. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
right. That's
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. Like they had to fight it, and they had some people had
Still
pulled
wouldn't have came,
themselves from the gutter,
still wouldn't have came home with me. I
yeah, I
and
know,
I got to be honest.
I got it.
I got to be honest. It would have been tough for me to fight for a bronze medal. It would have been tough, if not impossible.
Well, young, there's a lot of people that when they lose in the semifinals, and
Yeah,
then the person from the repertoire comes back up, that semifinal loser doesn't doesn't make it because they're just so dejected. The
no,
guy that comes from the bottom, he's like, oh my gosh, I have a second chance. He wins a match, wins another match. Elson is in the bronze medal. Like I can take a medal, I can salvage this. I mean, listen, I've been on the you know the
did you
the
ever
bronze medal, and
did you ever fight for a bronze? Did you have to go up through
I
a rapid charge? Did they have rapid charges when you were fighting?
I made finals, coach.
That's what I'm saying.
But
No,
I
no, no,
know, but
no.
I
Let's
was
keep it real.
I'm
No,
just
no. This is the uncut podcast. This isn't for everyone.
yeah.
Let's be clear. You and our ilk, guys like us, we fought to make finals. We didn't fight to make bronze medals. And I'd have to go back. I have a bronze medal or two. I don't know where, I don't have them, but I do
Yeah,
remember getting them. And I can tell you, I didn't fight for them. I lost a match back then. And that was and that's what you got. You got a bronze. And
yeah,
so I was okay with that because I had no interest in fighting for a bronze. It would have been difficult for me. If I
yeah,
were a brand new athlete, year one, competing and absolutely, I get it. Let me fight up for that bronze. Let me see. Let me get a few more matches in to see if I can. But and again, it's just I get what you're saying. But it's for me, it was just I'm trying in my world when I think about these athletes and what we're expecting from them. We're the United States of America. If the USA basketball team had won a bronze medal, I don't think there would have been any celebrations. If
oh no, no, no,
the
no,
women's
no,
soccer team got a bronze medal, there wouldn't have been any celebrations. There are
no.
sports that historically were expected to win and we should win. In this particular sport, listen, the world has grown, the people in it have grown, the changing of nationalities has grown. So if you don't win, listen, swimming, you get a bronze medal, you're losing by hundredth of a second. I get it. I get it. But in this sport where it's in your control, it's mano y mano, and you get a chance to fight somebody. I think we can expect more. And I got to be honest, I think if we expect more, we'll get more. But that's a leadership problem. I think that's a leadership problem. So I'm not sure, whatever. What do you see moving forward for 2028? What do you see as the changes necessary? Let's keep it personal. Let's talk about our domestic program. What changes would be necessary? And I'm not talking about staff and all that stuff. What do what does any country, let's keep it even more generic. What does any country that wants to be on the podium in 2028 need to do?
I mean, I think you need to find some young people. I mean, I think you need to, I think it's again different than our era. People can get good and scary in a matter of 2 to 3 years. Again, they have talent, they have work ethic, they've already been kind of in this little system, and I think you can take them in a couple years and get them on the podium. I really do. Who's going to be brave enough to search those kids out? I think if you believe that you look at some of the top athletes in this Olympic Games that they qualified top five in the world and then just went out, and you're like, what happened? How they just got old real fast. I think if the United States is looking at the ages of people, and you think, you know what? No, we're going to be able to ride this person. Oh, their age. All of a sudden, you're going to be looking up at their 27, 28, 29, 30. It could be scary. So I think if you're smart, you're looking for some young, athletic specimens of athletes, and then you hone their skills. I mean, again, as it sits right now, I'm working for the country of Brazil. My contract is coming up. We'll see what I do with it, see what they do with it. But on the fourth day of competition, we didn't have any heavyweights. We didn't have that category. I watched in the morning. I got my staff together, my technical director, my two other coaches, and we sat down for 3 hours. And we talked about athlete development, training camps, selection procedures, the best methodology to qualify for the Olympic Games. I mean, we didn't solve it, but we took about 2.5, almost 3 hours, and started throwing, spitball and throwing some things out there so that we can go back and we can get our next our meeting, and already in 2024 how we're going to attack 2028. We're not waiting around. I mean, we got to have the plan now. And so, I mean, you better prepare. I mean, this country, it's home country next time. I think the United States has to get 2 to 3 medals. It'll be tough. I mean, but your home country, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Well,
You have a direct qualification. You don't even have to qualify, right? You get, because you're the host country, you get automatic 2-2. If they can get some more, good for them. But you got to produce. You got to produce in your home country. You
and
do.
I think they can. I think it's going to be awakening, and I think it's necessary. Fortunately or unfortunately, I think there's some strong organizations out there that have great talent that's not entered the pipeline. AAU, for example, Bobby Stone's program is something I've been extremely impressed with. Running around here in California, I've looked at this organization, Mudo, and their guys compete in the AAU, and I don't believe they compete in the USAT. A lot of strong competitors. And where is the next Juan Moreno or Arlene Lemus coming from? Where is that next person that's outside the program that's going to come inside? If you really take a good look at our program, the great athletes in our program, with the exception of a handful, have come from outside. I came from outside. You came from outside. Arlene came from outside. Dana He came from outside. Those names and the Lopez's came from outside. So there's no doubt that those names and the girls that won last time came from outside the program. They weren't coached by the U.S. coaches. And the foreign U.S. coaches, they were coached from outside the program. So there needs to be an adjustment to. And you're right. It starts with the plan, and it starts with the high performance plan on how you can do it. I was speaking to a good friend of ours, and I told her, she's an Olympic gold medalist. I said, if I cared, and if you cared, and perhaps if you cared, I could guarantee you that in 4 years, we'd have 4 people on the podium, because we would put together our resources. We would develop a training center. We would bring those athletes in. We would get sponsorship from the people that we know, and we'd develop a program that would yield 4 performances, because we would do the talent search that was necessary. We would pull those athletes in, and in a 4 year period, like you said, we'd have them attend probably peak camps and travel around the world and compete. And I can guarantee you there'd be podium performances, because those athletes would be trained properly, given access to the information that's necessary. And that's how these programs are successful. People forget what Tunisia's connection is. People forget where Uzbekistan got their coaches and their athletes from. And people forget how Afghanistan and some of these other nominally recognizable countries in our sport started to develop. I'm not surprised by Iran. And why? Because
Yeah.
30, 20 years ago, when I went there, and it's as far back as 10 years ago, they have a domestic program. And every week they get together in one location and they fight for 3 hours. Everybody from all the different regions come in, they compete and train together. You get on that floor, there's 4 or 5 world champions, there's 10 Asian game champions, and they're still there. Those guys are still training. And I don't know if Hadi is still there. I don't know if Karami is still there. But when I went there, I saw Karami as a junior running around, grabbing people to beat up. People were running from him when he was a kid because nobody wanted to
Yeah.
fight him. I grabbed him. I
Yeah.
said, I haven't seen somebody like you since Juan Moreno or me. Right?
Yeah. No,
It
no,
was,
he was. No, those guys actually, Hadi is the president of Iran, and Karami is in Pakistan coaching. And he's actually doing pretty well over there. They got their first ever Asian game medal. Again, in this country, anybody that comes to this country and watches our nationals, our juniors, they're like, wow. I mean, I have people all the time. Mexico, they come over and they're just like, oh, these kids are unbelievable. But there's some kind of disconnect, and I have my own ideas why, but it just to get to your point again for 2028. Um, do you think that the people that are in the pipeline right now are going to be the ones that are going to take you to the promised land? Then it could be debatable. I don't know. I don't know.
I
Maybe one of them,
maybe
maybe
one.
two.
I don't believe that. I don't think they have the attention span. So I'll leave it at that. But I can tell you that the average lifespan of a CEO in an NGB, which is a national governing body for people that don't know, of a any sport is 1.8 years. The average CEO stays in that job for 1.8 years. Now, and that's usually because they don't perform. Some of the outliers were like Chuck Wilgus for, may he rest in peace, for USA Swimming, because swimming was performing endlessly.
Jeez.
The swimming athletes, you're right about youth. There are one or two that are outliers that, that stay the test of time and deliver and deliver and deliver. But a swimmer's ability to medal or gold medal or podium performance is like one quad, and that's it. And then there's a new one ready to take that space. And hearing you, I think you're right. I think this may, based on the scoring system and everything else, um, may be the same that these younger, taller, skinnier, athletic, agility wise athletes are the ones we have to be looking at, certainly through 2028. I still hold out hope for Taekwondo to return to some semblance of a game where power, athleticism, and strength and conditioning and body type is necessary rather than just being able to put your foot on a chest protector and close the circuit.
My brother-in-law, he coached for Guatemala, he coached for Mexico, he coached in Costa Rica, and he made a really interesting comment, because I was like, man, the chest protectors aren't working, blah blah blah. He's like, cuñado, which means brother-in-law. He's like, cuñado, maybe it's better that the little touches weren't scoring and people actually had to kick hard again. And even though it wasn't working, but maybe that hard kicking is better than them going kick, 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 kick. And I was like, good point. To kind of what you're saying, it almost made people kind of clench their fists, widen their legs, and kind of throw some heavy kicks. So maybe it can happen. Maybe it can
How
happen.
many? I know there was only one ring in this venue. How many knockouts did you see?
Knockouts? None. 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 There's definitely more parity now, though. Um, I think there
Even
could
with
have been.
even with parity, though, listen, we've been to the Olympic Games. Jay Warwick got knocked out, carried out.
Yeah,
He was one of our best athletes. He had a great career, and he went in against another great athlete with a great career and got knocked down twice. In
yeah,
every Olympic Games that we've been to, there have been people knocked out, carried out.
yeah.
And Pasquale,
No,
there when Pasquale did it in Sydney, I watched him do a double kick to a guy and knock him out. And the days of that kind of power being recognized or necessary to score, because it was a necessity thing,
yeah.
maybe have left the building. But and that may or may not be okay. It is what it is. But Taekwondo has to reconcile itself with its identity crisis. Is it point karate? And if it is, then we have the perfect scoring system. Although I will say the simpler solution was to fix the refereeing, because now what you have is they don't wave off a non-technique. If you put your foot in some form or fashion on the headgear or chest protector and it misses or hits the proximity center, it's a point. They're not waving off,
Yeah.
something that's not. And that's my one, that's my one personal gripe. But
No, listen, me and you, we go back and forth privately about the pros and cons about the sport, and I've adapted to it. I'm not gonna say I'm in love with it, but I appreciate what these guys could do. But listen, I take no pride in watching a replay over and over and over and have somebody barely, and all of a sudden 3 points go up and they're like, yes, we won the Olympic gold medal. And I'm just like, really? That's what That's what you go home and tell everybody as a fighting sport. Yes, I was fighting, and then the last second, I my
So,
the toe got his whisker, and they gave me 3 points. Like that's a little strange, but that's neither here nor there. I don't want to take away from the Olympic Games. I think it was I mentioned before we got on air, I'm an Olympic snob. I've been to a lot of these games, and I love each Olympic Games is special and unique, and this was a special and unique game for the backdrop, the craziness of who won and who didn't win, um, the energy of the crowd and the knowledge of the crowd. I thought was pretty special. So, I think all in all, Paris for our sport did a great job, and 2028 is going to be awesome in LA. So, oof, it's going to be big. It's going to be
well, it
big.
sounds like it was a thumbs up experience. And as always, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm Cut, and I know you're coming out this way to do a seminar and go to one of your juniors' weddings. And I
Yep.
look forward to seeing you then, and we can chat more about that. But in closing, is there anything you want to add, or have you covered everything?
No, yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's you know, I love speaking about, like you said, I love that word uncut, because we're just talking, and I think that we need to have some more. I would love to have some kind of, I don't know if you ever thought about this, and I don't know if we could do it in this format, some kind of round table format where maybe you're the moderator and we can debate points. I think that would be really interesting because I think again, I just taekwondo is it gets so prim and proper, and we can't say the wrong thing. But when I watch football analysis and baseball and basketball, they go at it. I
Yep.
I disagree, and afterwards they can laugh and they can joke and they show up tomorrow and they're on the show again. It's not
Well,
like
I've
they
got
hate
I've
each
got the
other.
perfect panel because I've been thinking about it, and it's going to be one of our best podcasts ever on Cut. It's going to be you. It's going to be me. It's going to be Dr. Steve Kapner because I know you just had a talk with him, and then I've got a
Mm,
surprise that I'll throw in there, and then I've
okay.
invited Arlene Lemus because I think she's an important part of the conversation as well because she's certainly a historical figure in it. But I'm going to keep one surprise guest in there, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a real thing. It's going to be a real conversation, and at the end of it, you know. It's a gloves off kind of thing. We'll all be respectful, but at the end of the day, we're going to talk real deal about real stuff because we have a lot of passionate people. I have you're my brother. I have the utmost respect for you, having been there from day one of your journey in this realm, at least, not in your other realms, and then watch the evolution of you. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing and able to articulate the things that you can about the benefits of the sport as in its current incarnation. And I, quite frankly, don't sit in chairs anymore any longer.
Mm.
Because I don't have anything relevant to say in that. I'm about process and matters now that are outside that sport. And that's why I look to guys like you to tell me what the deal is and to keep us in check. So I look forward to that conversation and I'm going to get it dialed in. I was supposed to see Dr. Kapner tonight. He's in Seattle, but
Oh,
my schedules are not going to make it. And I've got to go to Shanghai next week. And after that, then I'll be back. But I look forward to seeing you here.
all right, great. Well, let's do it again. Thank you again for always,
Thank you,
for
brother.
thinking about me. It was a lot of fun, and we'll catch
Thank
up
you for
again.
taking the time, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Well, like I told you, that was going to be an outstanding podcast with arguably one of the most intuitive and intelligent people we have in sport today. Coach Moreno shared his thoughts on what happened and what we can do to ensure gold medal performances in 2028. Don't forget to check out all our other podcasts. We have an amazing list of people. And until the next time, this has been Masters Alliance Podcast Uncut.